Okay, where were we?
Well, I was just saying about this sergeant here. He was explaining that no, this is the property line. And we didn't agree. I told Cindy Sheehan what we'd been told by the CHP officer the day before. And so I asked her to use her bullhorn and tell the crowd we're moving forward. And so she did that. And we turned around to move forward. And then, of course, they lined the street with several deputy sheriffs. Maybe there was 10 or 12 here altogether, I'd say, roughly. Mm-hmm. And so then they tried to start pushing us back, and of course we were a peaceful march. We didn't need a First Amendment petition. We had that with the Bill of Rights, First Amendment. So we didn't ask for a permit to do it. We knew we had the right to do it, and they didn't arrest anybody for not having a permit. But since I had this four-way hard bypass, I was not excited about getting hit in the chest by a baton. And you'll see in the video where he thrusted at me, and the second time he got too close to me, so I grabbed the baton with my right hand, and of course he just spun around. I was told weighed 275, 300 pounds, something like that. He was a much larger man than I
Sergeant Williams.
am. Yeah, his name is Sergeant Williams. They called him the arresting officer. Well, I've never talked to Sergeant Williams, so he couldn't have arrested me. So they're lying about that. Well, the result was that they took me in. They processed me. I met a couple of really dynamic deputy sheriffs that I'm going to be meeting with again, because I educated them about what's going on here. I educated them about the book, The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska. Neither one of them read about it. And in that book, on pages 102 to 106, it talks about a child being tortured and murdered here during the encampment in 1982. I'm sorry, 1984. Johnny Gosh was kidnapped in 82. So,
Horrific.
it was filmed right here on this property while they met, but 2,700 acres. Obviously, you could just move out 150, 200 feet away from other people, and you couldn't even hear people screaming in the forest because it's such a dense forest here, all these redwoods. So the whole result was that now we have not just one person who testified that what he had done here in '84. The key witness in the book, The Franklin Cover-Up, is Paul Bonassi. He's the boy that was brought here with another young man from another state. They were flown here from Nebraska, and I think it was Kansas, as I recall. And they came out here in the woods during the encampment. I think it was the date was late July, around the 25th, something like that, of '84. And they were forced to have sex with a little boy in a cage. And after they had sex with the boy, it was filmed by Hunter Thompson, the internationally recognized man who ran the Mitchell Brothers hardcore pornography theater for 7 years as the manager in San Francisco. They were the first guys to put out pornography, and so I guess they got into more kinky things as they went along. One of the brothers finally killed it, the other one here in Marin County, between here and San Francisco, and then the other one died, as I recall, maybe 4, 5, 10 years ago, something like that. My point is that Hunter Thompson was the producer of this film, and after they turned around and sodomized the kid and filmed it all, then a man with a lengthy appendage, right? Then you lost the words here, but didn't want to get too graphic. But anyway, he came in 10 inches long, and he sodomized the little boy. The kid was screaming, the blood, it was just a mess. And then after they did that and filmed the whole thing, then they took a pistol, put it to the boy's head, and they blew the kid's head off right here at Bohemian Grove while these events were happening. These people meet here for 17 days every year, including 3 weekends. It's always the end of July, every year. They've been doing it for 133 years, and they cremate a coffin every year, and done it every year for 133 years. And of course, it's been reported in print with photographs of the owl. It's a 39-foot high owl, and it's reported that they do a human sacrifice. They have a body in there, and the person's alive. They're probably drugged so that they won't, fight and yell, everything. And so now we have 3 people risking their lives, risking their loved ones' lives to tell us they live in 3 states, they've never met each other, but 3 men were brought here in their youth, and they were involved in child torture, child mind control, and then human sacrifice of 3 boys, different years that happened. And what's so sad about it is that they were all drugged up. They were mind control victims themselves. They had no control over what was going on here, but they then were forced not only to help sacrifice the 3 boys at different years, but then they also had to cannibalize the bodies. That's how sick these bastards are.
Now, is there any evidence of what would drive people to do this?
Well, I mean, the Lord gives us a choice. I'm glad He didn't create us as ants where we have no choice what we choose to do. We can either serve the Lord and honor Him, or remember He cast out Lucifer from the heavens with 1/3 of the angels. And they came down here, and He gave them control of the earth. So we have a choice. We can either choose to serve God, or we serve Lucifer. Most people have a belief in one or the other. Wouldn't you say that's probably pretty logical, that most people believe in one or the other?
Well, these days I'd say some people just don't, generally believe much. Yeah.
It's pretty sad, yeah.
But
of course,
essentially,
the Masons have been very important, key to that.
Yes.
Masons, for over 90 years in the last century, from 1900 to 2000, for over 90 years, the Masons had their monthly publication was called New Age. When it was exposed in books at the end of the century, they changed the name. So the 33D Masons, which they acknowledge they worship Lucifer. You can find this in books. Albert Pike was the one that changed the numerology to include the 33rd degree. And we think of it, of course, because Christ started his ministry at age 30, and he was sacrificed at age 33. So the occult, they study God's numerology. They know more about it than we do, and they reverse it. They do 180 degrees on it, and so they do a lot of evil things here. These people dress as druids, about 100 of them. I tell most people, you gotta understand that probably 95 or 90% of these people don't have a clue what's going on at the top. They don't realize there's human sacrifice here. They don't realize these kind of things are happening here because they don't do it. But see, if you read Kathy O'Brien's book, Transformation of America, she describes in her book that she was a CIA sex slave. She was brought out here to Bohemian Grove many times. And she was shown how to lay in a room where she was a sex slave, and her job was to make sure she got in a position so the man having sex with her would have his picture filmed. Okay? On film. Then of course people blackmail him.
Yeah, I was going to say that's how you control people.
It's all well documented in the Franklin cover-up, talking about the fact that, and he quotes John DeCamp, who was a CIA officer in the Vietnam War, recognized he was a Republican senator after he got out of the Vietnam War, and yet he was a 16-year state senator, and he was recognized by President Carter, a Democrat, as one of the 8 most highly decorated officers in the entire war. I shouldn't say officers, veterans in the entire war. And so John DeCamp wrote this book to expose what goes on here. He represents Paul Bonazzi, the kid was brought here, and he represents other children who were taken to Michael Aquino's home in downtown San Francisco at 2430 Leavenworth Street, and they were used as child sex slaves here as children. They were also programmed by Aquino. They've done the human sacrifices by Aquino. And the bottom line is that these 6 people, because they control our government, they do not get arrested for torture. They do not get arrested for the torture and murders of children. And that's how sick they are. They have control of our world. They laugh at us because they get away with it, and they don't get even arrested, let alone prosecuted, let alone imprisoned or executed for torture and murdering children. And remember when Oprah, when she was, after Aquino, the #1 high priest in the Church of Satan, I say, living at 2430 Leavenworth Street, downtown San Francisco in a penthouse. I've been there many times. I've been filmed there, okay? And now, as of last Friday, I was served a temporary restraining order by Aquino. It's the second time he's done this to me. I was exposed to him 4 years ago, and he got one against me. Now he got another one, and he got a 3-year restraining order the last time. I don't know what he's going to get this time, but we just were down there 2 weeks ago filming an expose on his porch, talking to him. He and his wife were on the intercom. I was talking to them, and so then they called the 911, claiming I was threatening their life, as if I could threaten his life. I mean, he's a CIA all his life, 40 years. He's got martial art techniques. I mean, sure, I'd like to kick him, you know where, but I wouldn't get my foot halfway to him, and he'd probably break my neck. You know, just one blow, he'd kill me. So I'm not willing to do that. Yes.
Given the Franklin connection with Boys Town and Hannah's Boys Center being in Sonoma County, have you uncovered any connection between the child sex slavery and the Boys Center?
The Boys Town Center.
Hannah Boys Center.
Hannah Boys Center, I'm sorry. Well, we suspect there's things going on there because obviously with these people owning this property, they control the politics, the district attorney's office, the chiefs of police. We found a couple of them were heavily involved in Satanism. The chief of police of Santa Rosa, Sal Rosano, who was chief in the 80s and 90s, he announced after serving 20 years, he was going to serve another 20. And bingo, he got exposed because we identified him as the #1 Satanist in the county. When all the Satanists got together, we had somebody who'd been to satanic events bragging about this fact, that Sal Rosano ran the meetings for the whole county. Thousands of people there, okay? So, to answer your question, we haven't got the proof on Hannah's, and you can understand why. I mean, they're very cautious on what they do. They got law enforcement to protect them, so we would have to find some boys that were actually there or have been there in the past. But most of them know that they risk their lives by exposing this stuff, so most of them are afraid to.
I understand, and that's why Occupy SF is your friend, and we'll protect you. Come let us know what's going on if you've got any information. Be a whistleblower like Doug. This man is invaluable in helping stop this child abuse, child slavery. I don't even know what to call it. It's so horrible. Satanism.
Yeah, it's heavily involved in Satanism. It's sad. But since we're talking about this, and of course you've talked about what you've been through before, Bill, would you please tell what happened to you with a San Francisco cop? We say Occupy SF, that means San Francisco, of course.
Well, we're going to do this.
We're going to do that later.
On Friday.
Okay, good. All right. So the bottom line is, folks, that I know I got off track there, and I missed something I was going to mention about the fact about the restraining order. I have to be in court on August the 1st for the second time. But last time, we served Aquino. See, he was telling people he was dead. He was using voice-to-skull technology. Now he went to a therapist down in San Diego County who was exposing him, and so he got her license. A therapist. I couldn't believe that he had that much power down there, that he could take her license away after she was exposing his tortured children down there. And so she notified me. I was tipped off that she was going after Aquino, so I contacted her. She tipped off me that Aquino was having his major event on the last week before Halloween in 2008.
awareness. And they can't.
Okay, the point is that what happened was that we contacted her. She said she would come up and we'd go out and do a protest in front of the hotel. It was called, one time it was called the Jack Tar Hotel at I think it's 1100 Van Ness Avenue, and it covers the whole block. And so she was going to come up here and we were going to go after her. And she said, I've been trying to serve him, but I've been told he's dead, and I keep getting his voice to skull. These people say that they've murdered him and murdered his wife. They've taken over all his properties and taken over his bank account and everything. I said, do you really believe that stuff? I mean, how could somebody come in and murder one of the top people in the world, torturing and murdering children, and get away with it? Number one. And then they brag about it? You know that he's still alive. She said, well, I believe he is, but I can't find his address. So I gave him his address, because he'd been living there about 30 years at 2430 Leavenworth Street. And so he knows he's above the law. The FBI protects him, the CIA protects him, because he was CIA for 40 years. But on the internet now, you can go on the internet and you can see where he did a puff job for himself, because he can't get anybody else to puff his life. He's such a sick pervert and such a psychopath. So what he did is he put out a report showing him in civilian clothes, typing on a manual typewriter with his wife in the background when they were both very young. And what's so bizarre about it is he announced in there he retired in 06. And he gave a quarter copy of his honorable discharge from the Army, signed by some general in 06. So we knew he was alive when he was claiming he was dead. And so then, bingo, my landlord, he goes on the internet and he finds this new film where, like I say, Aquino's on there, talking about the fact that he's not using his voice, he had somebody else use a script, saying that he was the general in charge of the National Security Agency. Whereas these armies said they kicked him out of the Army, and he was in the Army National Guard since the 1980s when he was caught torturing children. And they had 10, I went and met with the 2 cops in San Francisco, the top cops exposing Aquino. And they were so upset because one was the top Satan's exposer in the world, Sandy Gallant. And I gave her a copy of this film where in the film, it's a film by one of Aquino's victims, and what happened was she was playing in the living room, and all of a sudden Oprah comes on in the living room with Aquino's on, and she jumps up and screams and runs in the other room. And as it turned out, she didn't know who had sexually abused her, tortured her, and everything, because she had multiple personalities. But seeing the 2 of them there, she realized that would trigger her. She realized that was the person that hurt her, and she never even told her mother about it because she had split personality. And when you torture a little child before they're 7 years old, it's very sophisticated. They split their personality. Now, mom and daddy see the personality that went to the daycare or down to the church. There's a lot of churches that do this, not high percent, but a lot of churches nationwide that sexually abuse and torture children in Sunday school. Or maybe it's grandpa that did it, or maybe it's daddy, or mommy's boyfriend. There's such a sick bunch of people. So now, the parents only see, or the mother only sees this personality that went to those places, but now little Johnny and little Janie have altered personalities. Some are the same sex as they are, and some of them are altered, the opposite sex. The body, the mind, to keep the children from going insane, I believe it's God's way of protecting children from going insane. They split off into altered personalities, but now the CIA and the Illuminati have learned how to program these altered personalities to make sex slaves of little children, and there's hundreds of thousands in our country alone. When they grow up, then of course what happens to them? They become prostitutes, lesbians, and what? Sodomites. That's the sad part about it. That's where most of our, that's why we used to have, they said about 1% of the population were homosexuals. Now they say it's 10%, and it's even going higher. You see all these girls, they drill a hole in their tongue and they put in something so they can lick each other. And that's all happened since Clintons were in office. That's when that started. So back to Oprah. So when Oprah had the Kinos on, so they were exposed by these two cops I'm telling you about, and the other one, Greg Pampholoff. I met with both of them privately